Hello, my name is Nigel Griffiths. I work in the Advanced Technology Centre in the UK as part of IBM Europe. In this movie we're going to be looking at nmon and the fact that it now comes as part of AIX. Better make it very clear from the outset that it's AIX from these releases. These two releases of 5.3 and 6.1 became available first in November 2008. And nmon will now be available in all subsequent releases of AIX. If we go back in time, I can track the first nmon version to somewhere around 1996, and it was used as a tool in the UK for performance monitoring and benchmarking, capturing results and generating graphs. The first release was actually available outside IBM in 1998 at version 5. Up until then it had been passed around largely on floppy disks, can you believe it? And at the time, version 5 was about 2,000 lines of code. We're now up to version 12 in 2008, so that's 12 years and 12 versions later, and we find 9,000 lines of code. Now, if you're not a C programmer, that probably doesn't mean very much to you. It's actually a very small piece of code, quite efficient, and this means it doesn't use a lot of CPU power when it's actually running. Now, I have offered the nmon code to the AIX development team many times over the years, as a lot of customers would like a formal IBM and AIX support for nmon. Their reaction was usually, though, that nmon is not actually very good for problem determination, which is actually fair enough. It's for performance tuning, and when you call AIX support you're trying to find out what the problem is. And I think this caused the development of a program called Topaz. Now, we have provided support of nmon over the years via the Performance Tools Forum, and I hope we've done that quite well. And then we started thinking, well, perhaps we don't want AIX support, as we can already do the support directly ourselves, and we can add features as and when we want them, which is difficult to do if the code is controlled by the AIX labs. And the labs don't get the idea of backporting. When we produce a new version of nmon, then we actually backport it to all the older versions of AIX. Of course, the older versions of AIX quite often don't support some of the new statistics from the AIX kernel, and so we have to program around these and reduce the function as we go backwards through the older versions of AIX. And we decided that was okay, so we were happy continuing for the next 10 or 15 years. But then all of a sudden the AIX labs changed their minds, and they announced that, I should do this in my best Star Trek Borg voice, nmon will be assimilated. To be honest, it was quite a shock to the system. But then we thought, well, they have lots of plans for developing things, and some of them happen and some of them don't. It all depends on priorities and budgets and that sort of thing, so it still may not actually happen. And then all of a sudden they got very serious. We started seeing design documents, manpower is assigned. This was looked at by two of the senior performance tools designers inside AIX, and programmers were scheduled to start writing the code, and we started having design reviews. And it was quite a shock to me. I kept thinking, well, okay, I've been offering my code to the AIX labs, and all of a sudden they're stealing my baby. Here's my beautiful baby. I mean the one on the left-hand side, my nmon code, and they were suddenly taking it away from me, and I was perhaps losing a bit of control over it. But we got used to the idea. Now, nmon is actually, the function is put inside the topas command, and we've regarded the topas command as a bit of a competitor, really. But this has three main reasons. First, we don't like making new commands inside AIX for each new function. The problem with that is if we add, say, 10 or 15 new commands every year, over 10 years you end up with hundreds of new commands to learn and understand, and that doesn't help the systems administrators very much. Also, if you think about it, the topaz command and the nmon command are actually getting the data from the same place out of the AIX kernel. Once they've got that data, they just manipulate it slightly differently and show that either differently on the screen or in a different format for the file. So they're actually doing much the same sort of thing inside themselves, and so that actually reduces the duplication of code, and that keeps manpower down to maintain the code and to get it right. It's also slightly faster. The topas command gets the data out of the AIX kernel using a kernel extension, where nmon, because it's a separate program, it has to use a application programmer's interface, an API called libperstat, and it turns out that it's actually faster to do it the topaz way. So once I learned that we were about to adopt the nmon code and put it into AIX, I decided, well, there's a lot of features I haven't put in, but I would actually like them in. So we've gone in for quite a lot of code stuffing. Now that means all these ideas that we had that we wanted to put into nmon, we suddenly put them all into nmon. So that was the base release that will be adopted to go into AIX, and that release is nmon 12e. Now this is a foil from another movie that goes into the details of nmon 12e, and I've highlighted a couple of the bigger things that we put into the 12e before it was adopted and put into AIX. So all these features are actually in the code for nmon as part of AIX. I'm one of the beta testers for AIX, and Technology Level 2 as a beta came out in about June, and I downloaded it and started it up, and then I performed various tests against it to have a look at the new features. And I was using nmon on this copy of AIX for about 2 days before I realized that it's not my nmon, this is the nmon that actually came with AIX. So it was such a good copy of all the features and functions, and the screens all look the same and the data all looks the same, that it was actually truly amazing, gobsmacking, that I suddenly realized this isn't my nmon, this is the official one. In fact, when you first start up nmon, it tells you directly which version it is. If it's the official version, it says Topaz nmon at the top here, and if it's the original version, it says nmon version 12e. Now if you need to install nmon, this is what you do. That's it. Nothing at all. In fact, all you have to do is install this version of AIX, either a fresh install if it's a new machine or logical partition, or upgrade to these versions of AIX, and nmon is installed by default. I think that's a good enough reason for updating your copy of AIX by itself. There's also some extra functions and features available as well. Once you've done that, if you type in nmon, you'll start it up. It actually starts a script in user bin nmon. And if you just look at that script, you'll find a reference to the actual program, the binary that it runs is user bin topaz _ nmon. And that's a hard link to the topaz command. So it's the same binary, it just has 2 different names. And depending on the name of the command you used, how you got there, that will decide what it looks like on the screen. An alternative way of starting it is typing in topaz, and then you hit the tilde character, and it will flip from topaz mode into nmon mode, which gives you the best of both worlds at that point. Now it's started up with this script user bin nmon because that's a very popular place for customers of the original nmon to actually put the script, and that script would then start the binary related to that copy of AIX. So that fits in rather well. Now let's do a demonstration and show you both the old version and the new version. So here we have 2 windows, they're both logged on to AIX 6.1, Technology Level 2. In the bottom here we can see if we type in nmon from the whence command, this is the actual program it's going to run. If we cap that file, we'll see, apart from the header file here, it's going to run this program called topaz nmon and pass along the parameters. If we look at those 2 files, topaz and topaz _ nmon, and we open the inode number here, is actually the same program and the same file, and so it's the same program with 2 different names. And if we just want to start this up, we just type in nmon and off it goes. We can see here it's the Topaz version of nmon. Up here I have the older version of nmon, and I'm going to start up the 6.1 version, and we can see that's pretty close. Typically people go in and look at perhaps CPU and disk. You'll notice in colour you have to use an ARX terminal window to see the colour, but it's always been colour, and we can see there, apart from a slight time lag between the two different windows updating each other, their data is exactly the same. Other things you might want to look at is perhaps memory. Again, it's all exactly the same, and look at the logical partition details. Let's look at the top processes. And here you'll see for the most of the time that the nmon12E is taking slightly, ever so slightly, more CPU time than the Topaz_N process. So, well done to the ARX labs, they know a few things about performance tuning. And then we might look at the network and kernel stats. Again, they're all pretty much identical between the two versions. So we can see there online that the old version and the new version are identical. Most people, of course, are saving data to nmon files, and you'll find that all the parameters that you supplied to nmon will all work equally well with the new Topaz nmon command. If you actually look at the file output, it will all be identical. A couple of little differences you can notice at the top, that it's the Topaz nmon command actually being run, and that the version is not 12E or whatever, it's the Topaz that came with this copy of AIX. This means that these nmon files are now supported by the support team, and you can send them off to support if you have a problem with them. Of course, if you have an nmon file generated by the original nmon version, they're not going to look at those. Now there are various post-processing filters and commands that people use with the nmon data. We've tested the new Topaz nmon version with the analyzer and the consolidator in quite a lot of detail. Some of the other tools, two that are popular, are nmon to RRD and to the web, C and a program and a Perl program, and we haven't actually tested these in a great deal of detail. The users have the source code so they can go and fix that if there is a problem, but I don't expect there to be a problem. I'll probably go and check that as soon as I can. Then there's the problem of documentation, and in the past we've said, you're rather pulling our leg, aren't you, that you want us to write lots of documentation. We'd rather hack out some new functions and features into the nmon code. We've done our best, it's not particularly good. And with the new adoption into AIX, of course, that has got a whole lot better. There is now an nmon manual page, for example. The nmon is in the info center. I only put soon there because I haven't tested it. It only became available 2 weeks ago, and it should be on the web now. And we've got things like if the question mark, minus question mark gives you just the hints, and the minus H gives you the help details. That's all there too, just as before. The older version used to have written by Nigel Griffiths and no warranty given implied, and of course those are being removed because I'm not the writer anymore, and you can't get away with things like that in proper AIX commands. I tried to get them to put in the original concept by Nigel Griffiths, but they said no about that. They said, the developers, that I got the N in nmon, and that's as good as it gets. So maybe on my gravestone I'll put Nigel Griffiths, he's the N in nmon. Now they have added some extra features that we would never have dreamt of doing, and they put nmon support into SMPTE and what we call pconsole. Officially that's called the IBM Systems Direct Console for AIX, which is a bit of a mouthful, so people tend to call that the pconsole. This is the replacement for the WebSM interface to give you graphical user interface into Smitty. They both run off the same template, so that the data you actually see on the screen is pretty much the same, whichever interface you use. Let's do a little demonstration of that, but we need to explain a few little things first. Once you go into here, we can either ask for persistent files, which means this will be put into a cron job and it will run every day, or you can ask for the just a file right now and start it up. You can also ask for local on the local copy of AIX, or you can ask for the KEK view, and this is the topas -c type information where you can see all the logical partitions of a machine, and that's not a feature that we have with nmon and we're never likely to have. So if you don't go for the KEK view, because that's a topas only command, if you go for the local view, and you can either make it persistent or just do a one-off, it will then ask you, do you want binary files or nmon files? Now, the binary file is what has been available for quite a long time now, and it's in topas recording format. It's a binary format, and then you use the topas rec command to generate a report that is human readable in a text file. Of course, we don't want to do that. If you want an nmon file, you need the nmon details in the nmon style, and then it will ask you for questions about are you thinking of a day or a week, and then it will pre-populate a Smitty panel or a pconsole panel with the details, and then you have the options to put in all the different nmon options that you could have done in the past and start up either this doing it every day or just a one-off example. So let's have a look at that now. Okay, then let's have a quick look. Smitty topas. There's lots of things we can do in here, but we want to do a start new recording, and here we have the persistent local and the persistent KEK recording. This will put it into cron, or we can do a local recording as an example. It then tells us, do we want a binary or an nmon? Well, we need nmon. Then it's saying, do you want a typical day or a typical hour or a custom? Let's do a custom report, and it's pre-filled these columns here with 300. It's once every 5 minutes for all day for us. We might actually want to do something slightly different, so we could put in, want to do every 10 seconds and have 600 snapshots. And then below we have all the various details which are part of the nmon parameters. An example here is we want to collect top processes, and we'll do top processes with the arguments, and we can switch on all these other features if we want. And at the bottom here we have a whole load of things called process filters. This is used if we just want in that top process data particular commands. There's a load of commands we actually don't want. We just want to track particular commands. So maybe in here we'll put the commands that are for the database and not the ones for the backup script or something. But when we've selected our options here, we just hit OK. Are we sure? Yes, and off we go. And it started the recording. If we come out of there, then we can find the file. Here's my file that I've just started called, machine is called Bronze LPAR2. So it's behaving just like nmon would. The nice feature is we can actually get people to use this to put things into their cron jobs, so they'll have the nmon running as they want every day without actually having to edit the cron tab themselves. So let's do the same now from the pconsole, also known as IBM System Director Console for AIX, or something like that. These are the same Smitty panels as we probably recognise, performance and resources. At the bottom here we have configure topas options. This is the panel we saw in Smitty. Let's do start a new recording. We won't do the persistent local or KEK. They're already running actually, so that we can't do those. They're already collecting those for every day in my machine. And we'll take start a new one, binary or nmon format. That's okay. Let's take custom, and we'll see all the details as we did in Smitty. Perhaps here we want to take every 5 seconds and do it 500 times. We can decide what level of detail we want. Let's have the top processes with the arguments, and we have all the various other commands that we have with collecting nmon data. If we pop down to the bottom, we'll hit OK there. This is, I think, Firefox asking, are we sure we want to leave the page because we've changed it? And the answer is yes, and it's already started it. Let's finish off then with a few other cool concepts. We have nmon now, and the original version of nmon we're now going to call nmon Classic, and the new version with the developers we've agreed that this will be called Topaz nmon to make it clear which one we're actually using. Now the new official one, as we said, is available with these two versions of ARX and on into the future. And if you've paid up for ARX support, then you have support for that command. Now with the older classic version of nmon, please only run the latest version. We don't like supporting older versions. That's why we produced the new version in the first place. And if you want support for that version, then you'll do that in the same way as we have been doing for the past couple of years, and go to the ARX Performance Tools forum and place your question there, and we'll do our best we can to get you answers and look into any problems that you're having. Now what are going to happen over time? Well, we've got the older releases of ARX will be around for quite a long time. I know a lot of customers are reluctant to just upgrade ARX if they don't need to. But over time we'll see, as more and more releases of ARX come out and users start using these newer versions with nmon already available inside ARX, that over the next 5 years perhaps we'll phase out the classic version and most people will start using the Topaz nmon version. But we'll see the nmon classic version sticking around for quite a long time, I should imagine. Now what are we going to do for further development? Well, I think there may be a 12F version coming out in the classic line, and that will it's got a couple of little bug fixes that we know about, one of which was actually very politely pointed out by the ARX developers in the nmon source code. Very rarely people using the particular feature in which that bug may appear, but we'll actually remove that. There's a couple of little typos and things we'll tidy up as we do as well. So in the next couple of months there may be a 12F version, and only if you're using the very latest machines and you're using this particular feature will you actually need to really upgrade. In the future then, as new versions of ARX come out with more data available, new features in ARX or the Power 6 range of computers, then there'll be more data available with those versions, and we'll put the new features into the Topaz nmon version. A couple of little shortfall things here with the Topaz nmon. The current release in these levels don't support the WPAR monitoring. In fact, the nmon 12 classic version doesn't run with TL2 and produce the WPAR stats either. In fact, it will just stop dead in its tracks. This is because the workload partition statistics, the interface was changed with this version of ARX. We may get that working in 12F, or it may be proved to be too difficult. But something to be aware of, the next version of ARX, which is typically scheduled in the middle of next year, in 2008, then that should have the WPAR monitoring. That's certainly their intention at the moment. We will still respond to performance questions on the forum, even if it's the Topaz nmon, if it's a general question about the performance stats and how we should monitor those and what do they really mean, that sort of questions we'll still provide answers to on the forum. But if it's a genuine problem with the data coming out of Topaz nmon, then you'll be able to call up ARX support and raise a PMR for it. Would like to highlight the fact that nmon is very popular, but at least half of this story is due to this man, Steve Atkins, and he's the writer of the Analyzer and a new tool that he's working on that takes the same nmon data called the Consolidator. This will take nmon output from a whole bunch of machines and do quite a lot of sophisticated further analysis, either adding the data so that you can look over a longer time, or pulling the data from lots of logical partitions on one particular machine and showing you what the whole machine is doing. So that's certainly worth investigating. But I'd just like to highlight, well done Steve, and he supports the new nmon data coming from the topas nmon command. Now, one side effect we have of having the nmon and topas integrated together is if we start up in nmon mode in here, perhaps look at CPUs and disks or something, we can flip into the topaz mode with the tilde character, and we can see all the topaz data as well. Sometimes it may have little extra details that we actually want to go and have a look at. And if we hit a capital C, we go into kek mode, where we'll see all the logical partitions on this particular machine. Now, Topaz here has to go to talk to the HMC to find out the other logical partitions, so that takes a few seconds or two. We'll just let that come up. There we go. I never use dedicated CPU partitions, so hit D and we can switch off those stats. And I also like if we hit G, we get some more information about what's going on in the machine. So now we have the best of the Topaz world, the kek view, and nmon data, all in one package. Well, thank you very much for watching my movie on nmon being integrated into Topaz as part of AIX. One final question that I get quite often is, how does this affect the nmon for Linux? Well, that's different source code, completely different project, and that will continue as normal.